Hello, this is Gerald Jan van Was. I hope they'll have just 5 minutes to explain the word arm as a combination of letters. How you can see in the combination of letters what the word expresses. Because every letter has a predefined definition of a specific position in time and space which we deal with. Why does that work? Because we have a way to handle actually the definitions of words to see how much we can distinct between differences that we see. Some differences we can simply use as definitions with a stable focus. Other definitions doesn't define themselves so well because they are so much into a changeable situation and position that we define them via time. There's other letters that are related with that, and if that is even more complex, that there are so much movement that we have to look for a balance first before we can really define it better. We have also some letters for it, and in combination of these four forms a logic that is the logic that is used in the letters, just as it is as if these are like numbers. Let's say we just use them automatically, we don't think about it, but we use that balance. We hear the differences or the distinct differences, and we use these differences in that way, as if we can say, okay, here I have a mediated definition. Oh no, I don't have a mediated definition, so what do I have to look for? That kind of logic is automatically. I have the word arm, and each letter, that's how the practical workout of learning how to understand the combinations of letters works, is that you put every letter from the word into the right order, and you put them into the right frame. So there are three kinds of frames: the spatial frame, the timing frame, and the contextual frame. You have only two frames used. These are the spatial frame 2 times, and 1 time the contextual frame. So far you can't make up anything from it, but it gives you already the starting point positions which you immediately deal with. In all languages is used as a center point, a starting point, and so on. So it is there at the right spot where we have the definition of perspective, even that we have our perspective there. That's our starting point there. That's already a logic. I can define each letter, but let's go from there. So A is basically this focus upon a center, which is then also basically a physical center in a spatial frame without need of time at that point. The next letter is then the R. The R will have also a position in that scheme, and the position in that scheme is somewhere there in the middle. So you have these 3 levels: the starting points, the continuation level, and then the limiting level. So where you have to see where are my limits. So it's somewhere in the middle where you can have a continuation aspect of the context. So you can have a continuous access to do something with it at that point. The last letter is that M, so it is also about placement, and so where is it in the definition? So you have these 3 levels. You have the starting points here in stable, the stable positions of the positions in space. So we have starting points, we have continuation points, and again the last category is about defining the limits, defining the borders. It's there in the middle of the last category. So it's in the continuation of where shall I be able to use it in a certain unlimited way, let's say. And the M is as the last category is at the stage. It's actually, if you have blue, green, and red zone, it's in the red zone, but it is defined as in the middle, so it is in a growing or changing state. So you know already, oh, it is about change. I have a start, okay, I have a change, I have a limit. That kind of balance is also there. And now I will show you what the combination is. But first, I noticed already something which is off in this definition, because I had A, R, and M. But when I have my focuses, which I have here, the general focus is the first person is me, and that's the other. These are starting points that makes also a logical sense. If I put a figure in there and I have the A looks down upon what you have in space. If I focus on myself and on my body and so on, my focus has to go up to my shoulders, because here are the arms. So actually, the definition of arm, which I immediately spontaneously used, seemed not to be correct, because my focus is higher. Is this defined in arm? Actually, when I have the combinations of A is underneath, and then R, I have to use there are also definitions of geometry. I can use the geometry behind it. Geometry is horizontal, vertical, diagonal guidings that shows you, okay, where shall I find the point that I need. And if you don't immediately find the point where I need, you need, of course, a geometrical guiding line, and the guiding line behind it is in the second category of R. It is in the vertical, so I also go a little bit more vertical to see the context, and I go to a different context. My focus, my normal focus, which looks a little bit down onto the earth, goes a little bit up, and that is what the R also does. It goes a little bit up in my focus when I start from a center focus. From A to R makes my focus also slightly up. It's not necessary, because it simply shows and finds a new context with R. It finds a context, and the context is not the full body but it goes to a part of the body within R. So I have my definition, which is now a little bit higher up. My focus went a bit higher up. This is an interpretation, so I just leave it like an interpretation as well. But it is still correct what I do. So I have my focus slightly up. I can have the at any place, of course. I can focus on a starting point anywhere. I can focus up, or as long as this is the starting point. And I have now my first starting point, which I'm going to use to define the arm, of course. And the arms, we know, has these starting points here. So also there, isn't that off? Because I'm not using the center point here. What is different? The differences, if I look at the definition into the frame of how I have to interpret the focus and balance in the context. Context has three focuses in the background, but I have 1 point of starting point in the first category, 2 points of starting points in the second category, and 3 points that matter to define my position and that I deal with in a position. So they can count all 3 of them in E and S. They count only 2 of them, always count, or they only count 1 position definitely in Q, V, and G. Here there are 2 points, and that's in that way it still fits into that balance. I have the vertical 2 points that gives my attention, that defines my new context. I have a starting point, but I go to a context. It doesn't say new context, I go to a context and make a context, and the context splits myself to the number 2, and there are the starting points of the arms. The way it also fits with the flipped A actually, so that I can go to the shoulders, but that's just accidental actually. But it's quite funny to realize that from one focus of A, the horizontal, to the 2 focuses that are vertically up in context. And there they are. So there are the starting points for arm. For the is the R already, which I have there at that point. And the R is the R itself in the scheme is as a geometrical form. Because it's in the middle, there is an importance of the vertical, but in a way also there the balance, if you really have to be complete, the balance in the spatial frame is in 3 dimensions, but on is in 3 dimensions of course, but it is the background is actually quite one-dimensional. You have that in the 3 in space. When we also define space, we always start from one point, and you have the 3 angles there. So that's the 3-dimensional space from one position, actually, from one point of vision. The last one, it makes it quite complex, has these 3-dimensional vision. It can go all directions. It starts, of course, from my shoulder. It can also go into other directions, but the arm potentially goes into all directions, potentially in timing, in space, all of it at once, without a defined definition where it should be, where the arm should be. The M continues from R and actually defines how far it will go, how far it will lead. It leads us back to spatial frame. The M is in the definition of the spatial frames, and the M is in the last category. It's about limits, about finalizing, about borders, about how far shall I go. And in the second category there it says, and that's which I will follow. I will follow it in a kind of continuation. So it's in the last of the 3 categories, so a bit in the red zone that you can say, okay, can I still find it in space, yes or no? It's still there somewhere, it's going somewhere, and it's in continuation somewhere. So it's not so well defined that you can say, okay, it's there exactly at that spot, but it's going to somewhere. That's what I'm sure. It's going somewhere. That's what the arm is doing. It can go somewhere, and it will finalize itself in space. That's what it will do. And it continues and can continue to do so in that way. Okay, maybe it wasn't the easiest one to define, the arm, and I didn't succeed to keep myself under 10 minutes, but I hope you found this a contribution to understand the combinations of letters. This wasn't the easiest one because I also adapted a few times, but I adapted also accordingly to what was possible and to what the theory allows, still allows within the limits, and that makes it easier to understand also what's going on in ARM. What is ARM doing? The R is the connections. You can have the connections, you have a center point, you have the connections, and it finalizes itself at the end. Actually, mostly that, and you can also define it in different ways, and I think I did that also a few times before. Okay, thanks again, bye.